Okay. Hi, Joseph. How are you?
Good, Douglas. How are you?
Doing fine. Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
When I saw your bio, the first thing I thought of was ISO 9000, total quality management. Is that what you're doing?
I've done that in my past. That's a small piece of quality, the kind of the big umbrella of quality. I've been more focused on just driving improvement across the company, and so I've kind of worked from everything from working with suppliers to working with customers and kind of everything in between. So I feel like I've got a pretty broad scope of working in quality, and I've worked in very large corporations and I've worked in a number of small startup companies. Um, so I've got that difference too, that I kind of see it from two different worlds.
Okay, so people would hire you to come into their company and you would be a consultant. How long would you typically stay there?
It really depends on what we'd be doing, and what where they needed help. I'm doing some training with some companies where I just come in and really literally just give them a training session for a week or a couple of weeks. But a consulting role may take a little bit more depending on what they're looking for. So it really varies.
Do you do speeches in front, like if this is a big company with hundreds of people, would you give a presentation in front of all the employees?
I've done that before for companies. And that part of that was when I was actually working inside those companies. I've given large presentations, kind of like an all hands meeting, talking about different topics. So I can do that, but typically in a consulting role, it's more coming in and working with a smaller group of people or some set of managers that really have a need and trying to help them work their way through that need.
Just for clarification, when we're talking about quality and quality management, this isn't the actual quality of the product that we're talking about. This is the quality of how effective the company is operating.
Yeah, so I'm really looking at helping more at a higher level. Certainly, I've done work where you're working on a specific product and trying to drive improvement into that product. But yeah, for these consulting roles, it's more at a higher level. And the book really is about kind of building. And I wanted to create awareness around how important culture is, because after working at a number of different companies, I saw some really successful improvement efforts, and I saw some that were not so successful. And when I started reflecting on the ones that were not so successful, it really always came back to the culture really wasn't ready for that. And if you don't have the right culture, really, it doesn't matter what methodology or tools or training you have, because the culture is not ready for accepting that kind of a change and really dealing with it. So really the reason for writing the book was to create that awareness about there's such a close correlation between your culture and your improvement effort, that I wanted to kind of make people more aware of that connection and what to do about it.
When you say culture, you mean the working environment?
Yes, yes. So how people feel about what they're doing and who they work for, and kind of getting into some of the whole engagement effort. Are people engaged or are they disengaged? Is it a safe culture or is it a toxic culture? And so those things really have an impact on people, and trying to drive quality improvement in a company that has a toxic culture, it's just not going to go anywhere, because people are more worried about their job or their safety, and so asking them to be thinking about improvement is kind of fruitless, right? Because that's not what's on their mind. So I think you got to fix the culture before you could really have a true improvement effort that's going to be continuous.
I know that a lot of companies have shifted away from the traditional culture of having basically a dictator at the top of the chain and everybody just does as they're told, rather like a military environment. And I think people are finding that that doesn't work so well in a corporate environment. What are you finding as the number one, maybe the number one problem that you see when you go into these companies that might have a toxic work environment? Is it that, or is it something else?
Well, yeah, I think it's related to that. I think one of the things that I've been seeing is that there is just such a lack of formal management training. So people get moved into leadership roles for all different kinds of reasons. And very often, like in the technical companies that I've been working with, it may be one of the more technical people in the group, and they may be very bright. In fact, most of them really are extremely bright technically, but they've never been trained on how to manage people. And so they start to have these, I call them demotivators, built into their work style, where they either micromanage people or they just don't have really clear expectations of what the people are supposed to do. So that people are floundering and they're not quite sure what they're responsible for. And some of that just comes back to just not having any formal management training. So they know how to run projects. These managers may know how to run projects and manage projects, but they may not be educated or trained on how to manage people. And I think that's a big contributor to some of these environments.
I've had some other people on my show who also are doing similar work to what you're doing. And they seem to have all said that a lot of the problems that they have encountered have been with the middle management. That they said that the top of the management chain is fine and the workers are generally fine. It was the middle guys that were the ones that were the problem children for them. Have you found that to be true?
I think there's often a disconnect, but I think still ultimately those leaders of the companies need to know what's going on in the levels below them, right? So if there's a disconnect, they still need to understand why there is a disconnect. And so some of them may just be as simple as that you have a real strong personality. They might be really, like I said, they might be a really technically bright person and don't have any patience for anybody that's not as technical as they are. Or it may be that they just do not have any people skills, and they just need to develop those as a leader. And so to answer your question, yes, I have seen that where I think the intent of the executive team may be we have these values that we want everybody to embrace, but they're not being embraced up and down the chain. To your point,
where do you think this is going? Where do you think the future of corporate environment is going to go in the United States? Or where would you like it to go?
I would really like to see more focus on building, and it's not just a quality thing, right? When I talk about culture, I think that impacts your whole entire business, right? And in fact, I think it would be a differentiator for your business if you have a really strong culture, because you're going to be able to react quicker because people are more bought in and they're more engaged. So I think it's really a competitive advantage if you build it that way. And so I think where it's going, I think, is it's changing because now so many people are working virtually. Now a culture takes on a different meaning, right? Because now you can't pull everybody into a room and do team building because everybody's in different locations. So I think that's evolving. I don't think we understand exactly how that's going to evolve yet, but I do think that really understanding how to get people engaged is really important, and certainly from a quality perspective. But I think from across your business, I think if you have goals if the executive team has goals that they want to meet, you really want to have your people engaged. And if they're not engaged, you're going to have a difficult time making those goals, and whether it's financial or it's quality or whatever it may be, releasing a product. I think you have to have people that are bought in to what you're doing, and if they feel good about their role in that. And so I think creating that sense of purpose where everybody has something where they're all working together, I think really makes a difference.
You brought up remote work, and I want to just bring that up real quick. Especially during COVID, we saw a real uptick in people working remotely. And on the surface, it seems like that's a great idea. From the obvious reasons of no commuting, saving money, you might not, even the company that could go 100% remote could, they don't have to rent a building anymore, okay? We haven't really seen the downside to it yet. Do you think there is going to be a major downside to people working remote, or is it all good?
I think the answer is we don't know yet.
We don't know.
So I think it's still pretty new. There certainly are some advantages in for quality of life. I think people really enjoy that opportunity where you're not getting stuck in traffic for an hour going to work and coming back from work. But I do think that there is value in people sitting around a table and talking together and getting to know each other. And I think today you have virtual meetings and you cover your topics and then you're done. And I just think people are not going to be as close as they were without really trying to make some changes in terms of how you communicate with people. So I think it's still developing. There's certainly people that are looking at this a lot closer than I am on the virtual stuff, but I do think that it's still new and we're still learning from it. And to your point, I think companies are looking at it as, wow, we could close some of these offices and not have to, go through all that expense. But then is the productivity where you think it would be? And I think it's just going to be changing the way we manage. I think over time is going to be required as we get to understand this better.
Okay, so your book is called Sustainable Quality. Is it basically covering what we've been talking about?
Yes. So it really starts out by kind of providing an understanding of how closely tied quality improvement is to culture. And I started out by asking the question, why are continuous improvement efforts always fizzling out? And the reason is because I feel like there's a missing ingredient, and that ingredient is culture. So if you go back and look at some of the old quality models from the quality gurus, they're 30 some years old, all these quality models, and they weren't thinking about culture at that time, and they weren't thinking about all the things we've gone through, the changes in technology, the changes in social media. And so many things have changed in the last 30 years. I think it's really kind of a time where we need to look at what does quality mean today, and how do we make the most out of quality. And I think the book talks about building that foundation for a culture of quality where people feel excited and inspired by what they're doing, and they're going to have that internal drive to want to do their best. So I think the challenge that the book poses is for leaders to kind of create that environment, that work environment where people feel proud of what they're doing and they feel like they want to do their best for the people they're working with and for the people they work for, and they really believe in the vision of the company. And I think if you create that, I think it's a very powerful thing.
Well, on that note, I think we're going to have to wind this down. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Do you have a website you want to give out?
Yes, so it's www.dieleconsulting.com, and that's Diele Consulting.
Okay, and on the website, there's links to where you can buy the book?
Yes, there is.
All right, great. Okay, Joe. Well, thanks for coming on. It was nice meeting you. Nice talking to you. Best of